Summer's supposed to be the easy season. So why are so many people quietly Googling a therapist between summer Fridays? Because more daylight doesn't fix the hard stuff. Sometimes it just turns the volume up. Grow does therapy differently. Therapy is not only for when you're in crisis. Grow Therapy is here for all the moments when you decide you want more. More support, more clarity, more tools. Mental health isn't a destination you reach. It's something you build, and Grow makes that easier. Grow connects you with thousands of high-quality licensed therapists across the U.S., offering both virtual and in-person sessions, nights and weekends. You can search by what matters, like insurance, specialty, identity, or availability, and get started in as little as 2 days. There are no subscriptions, no long-term commitments. You just pay per session. Grow helps you find therapy on your time. The therapist you want takes your insurance on Grow. Grow accepts over 125 insurance plans. Sessions average $21 with insurance, and some pay as little as $0 depending on their plan. Visit growtherapy.com/book now today to get started. That's growtherapy.com/book now. growtherapy.com/book now. Availability and coverage vary by state and insurance plan.
Radio Retropolis.
Welcome to the Superman Radio Podcast here on Radio Retropolis. In our last episode, Anthar, Poco, and Jimmy landed on Utopia only to escape danger, while Kent and Perry went to the planet Roof. We're talking about the Daily Planet Roof, not to another planet. The Daily Planet Roof to speak with the elevator operator who may have some answers for them. Now, there has been some dispute, again, more dispute among Superman fans as to whether George Reeves, and I'm talking about my era of George Reeves, whether he was truly happy playing Superman. Yes, George grew frustrated with playing Superman. It was due to low pay, typecasting, and the character's one-dimensional nature, leading him to try and distance himself and even briefly leave the show after 2 seasons, seeking more serious roles and types of work, though he eventually returned, becoming synonymous with the hero. Yeah, he really did. It was after season 2, he was done with it at that point. So he left, and they went to Kirk Alyn to take over the role. The Kirk Alyn who did it in the movie serials in 1949 and 50. And I never really cared for him in that role. I didn't think he didn't seem Superman to me. There's something about him that just didn't work. And again, maybe I'm biased because of George. You know, everything starts with George with me. So perhaps that's the case. George was the guy I saw first. And if you saw Kirk Alyn first, then maybe he was your guy. But anyway, they went to him and he refused. So he said, nah, I've done it already. I don't want to do it anymore. So they went back to George and made him a new deal. But I'll talk about that in a second. They kind of screwed him over a little bit. Now, the reasons for his dissatisfaction: he felt he was underpaid for the show's immense popularity, leading him to take on other work like doing the promotional events and wrestling, Mr. Kryptonite. He would go out with Noel Neill, dressed as his Clark Kent persona, and do this whole song and dance show. And then he would do this wrestling thing dressed in his Superman costume against Mr. Kryptonite and do that whole business. And again, typecast. The iconic role made it hard for audiences to see him as anyone else, hindering his dramatic acting career, which was a shame because of that era, which made it literally impossible for people to break free, especially for television if you were known for a certain thing, to go on and do other stuff. Had he lived, I think he would have had a tremendous career if he could have just weathered a little bit of that late 50s to 60s, doldrums, which he probably would have faced. He may have had to do a few lowbrow sort of guest shots here and there. I think he could have geared more as a director. I think he could have been a very successful director in television drama in particular. I think he could have directed some major shows like a Perry Mason, for example. I think he could have been great in that. I think he could have been great in Perry Mason doing something as a guest in something. And going further into the 70s, I think he would have had a rebirth of sorts. This sort of resurrection. So not to go back to the Christ-like thing, but that's kind of how I see it. He comes out and he could be the next Jock Ewing. He would have been a great Jock Ewing. And, Jim Davis played Jock Ewing in Dallas. And he died after 2 or 3 seasons. And everything focused then on JR, and it became a super mega hit and fantastic. But what would have happened had George Reeves been alive, been cast as Jock, and he lived throughout the whole series, well into, starting this in his 70s and until his 80s? That would have changed the dynamic of the show. And I'll bet you it would still have been a fantastic show, the struggles with JR and all of that. Dealing with the patriarch of the family. I think that would have been a fantastic show. Or he could have been Blake Carrington on Dynasty quite easily, John Forsythe did a nice job. But imagine George, who could play that sort of oil tycoon. I think he was an oil tycoon. Blake Carrington was as well, too. I don't really recall. And but more of a dapper thing that, as opposed to the cowboy of Jim Davis. Play that sort of Colorado highbrow sort of thing that could have romanced a Joan Collins. So I could have seen that. He did find Superman a one-dimensional character, limiting his artistic expression. He attempted to do a few other things, like From Here to Eternity, but that Superman image still stuck with him. Despite his frustrations, Reeves was dedicated to the role and understood his impact on children, often acting as a real-life hero at events. But the struggle to break free from the Man of Steel persona was a constant challenge. All right, now let's get back to our exciting serial here and see where it takes us. Jimmy is in trouble on Utopia, but Kent is finally figuring it out back on Earth. Here it is. This is part 4 of The Mystery of the Lost Planet from April 14th, 1947, here on the Superman Radio Podcast on Radio Metropolis.
Faster than a speeding bullet. More powerful than a locomotive. Able to leap tall buildings at a single bound. Look, up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. It's Superman.
Kellogg's Pep. P-E-P, Pep. Kellogg's Pep, the Sunshine Cereal, presents
The Adventures of Superman. Today, Clark Kent continues his narrative of Superman's most unusual adventure and recounts the details of Jimmy Olsen's predicament on the planet Utopia. Writing an account of his most unusual adventure as Superman, Clark Kent told of a strange bearded man named Anthar who insisted to Jimmy Olsen that he came from the planet Utopia to warn of an invasion of the Earth. Jimmy, we learned, scoffed at Anthar's story until he was forced into a spherical space shell, piloted by a little fat man whom Anthar called Poco and who spoke only in rhyme. And a very short while later, Jimmy found himself on the planet Utopia where, because of a difference in gravity, he was unable to move. Then, while Anthar and Poco were carrying him to safety, they were spotted and pursued by vicious guards of the cruel ruler Zaram. Now, Kent continues with his story.
Worried about Jimmy's disappearance with a strangely dressed, peculiar-acting old man, Editor White and I went up to the roof of the Daily Planet where we learned the boy had gone. He was, of course, nowhere in sight. Instead, we found Tom Carlson, a radio announcer, unconscious. While the chief ran off to call a doctor, I worked over Tom, and in a few moments he began to come to.
Oh, Kent, is that you?
Yes, Carlson. What happened to you, fella?
Why, holy smokes, Kent. Jim Olsen.
Yes, what about Jim? Did you see him up here on the roof?
Yes. That is, I think I did.
Now, look, Tom, maybe you better start from the beginning and tell me everything that happened.
Well, I just finished our hourly news broadcast.
Yes?
I came up on the roof here for a breath of air. I often do that.
Yes, just go on.
I started to walk across the roof, and I heard a funny noise, kind of a high-pitched whine, like, well, sort of like electric motors of some kind.
Electric motors?
That's right. Then I saw the strange contraption, a big spherical thing, like a great big ball of some sort.
And the motor sound was coming from that?
Yes. This thing was gleaming in the dark, and it was transparent. I could see right into it, like into a lighted room.
Now, wait a minute, Tom. Are you sure you're not still kind of fuzzy?
No, Kent, I'm not. I tell you, I looked right inside that ball, Kent, and there sat Jimmy.
Jimmy Olsen?
Yes. He was struggling with a tall, thin man dressed in shorts.
Oh, it's Scott the Madman.
And another man, a little fat guy, was working levers in the forward part of the sphere. I started over there when all of a sudden, whoosh, the ball shot off the roof as if it had been fired out of a cannon.
What?
No kidding. Jets of air shot out of the ball when it took off and knocked me back against the tower. Before I passed out, I swear I saw it shooting up to the stars.
Utterly and completely shocked by Tom Carlson's story, I just stood there and stared at him, for the moment unable to believe what I'd heard. And at that time, I learned later from Jimmy, he was thousands of miles away on the planet Utopia. There, he and Anthar, surrounded by armed guards dressed in gleaming tunics of woven metal, were marching down a long, high-vaulted corridor.
Where are these guards taking us, Anthar?
Take us to the evil region, Saddam, friend James. I would advise you to expect the worst.
Jeepers.
Oh!
Golly, now what?
Saddam's council room is behind these tall doors.
Uh-oh. Then this is it, huh?
Shh. Better be quiet.
Inform His Excellency that I bring the prisoners.
Look, Anthar, how come Poco isn't here with us?
He was taken away by the guards while you were in the compressor chamber.
Taken away? To where?
I do not know.
Gee whiz, you don't suppose they did something to poor Poco, do you?
I do not know.
Anthar, look.
Be silent now.
You may bring in the prisoners. Very well. Prisoners, march!
Come, friend James.
Boy, what a room. Big as a house.
This was formerly the king's own council room.
The stained glass windows and the paintings and rugs.
The prisoners will advance.
Come, walk with me, friend James.
That guy up there on the high throne, is
Yes, that is Saddam.
Huh. He doesn't look like much.
His appearance is deceiving.
Holy smokes. Look who's sitting on that cushion at Zaram's feet. Look, it's Poco.
Prisoners, halt!
Spy, nasty spy.
Hey, did Poco say that to us, Anthar?
Yes, but I do not understand.
Anthar's a spy, and soon he will die.
What?
And you Earthling, too. Your end is due.
Well, how do you like that look, Poco?
Silence, Earthling! You, Anthar. You call the Earthling friend?
Is not that the usual greeting in Utopia, Excellency?
Among ourselves, yes. Not to our enemies.
The boy is not an enemy.
No, of course I'm not.
Is he not from the earth?
Yes,
And are
but
not they of the earth our future foes?
I trust not, sire. I have attempted to convince you that you make a dreadful mistake in your plan to invade the earth.
You attempt to convince me. Who are you to dare to challenge your regent?
I do not challenge. I only assume my right as the senior senator of the council to advise you.
I've heard your advice, and I decided against it. You dared to cross me secretly, dared even to go to our enemies and warn them of our intentions. That Anthar makes you a traitor.
He is not a traitor, and Poco knows it.
What is this? Poco knows what?
Well, Poco was...
Quiet, friend James.
Anthar, Poco's saying...
Silence, Earthling! Well, Poco, it appears that the Earthling gives the lie to your story. He seeks to imply that you know more of Anthar's trip to Earth than you've told me.
It is a lie. A lie what he seeks to imply. It's just as I said. I was asleep in my bed.
If that is so, I am reminded to ask how came you in the park when the guard captured Anthar and the Earthling?
Yeah, let's hear you answer that.
James, please.
Answer, fool! How came you in the park?
Well, there was a pain in my head. So I rose from my bed and strolled in the park to hear the song of the lark. Then down came the space shell close where I stood. Oh, so startled was I, my legs turned to wood. But when I saw them step out, they aroused my ire, for I knew they meant ill, to you, Zaram, sire. And so swift I gave chase, and when the guards came, I held fast the two villains. And now, me you dare to blame.
Well, how do you like that?
Do not deny him, friend James.
But Anthar...
Please,
You, Anthar! Does the fool speak the truth?
Yes, sire, he does.
What say you to that, Earthling?
Why, I guess that's the way it was.
Good. I did not think the fool could dare be treacherous to me.
No, I could not be, sire. For you I love and admire.
Enough! Anthar, you admit then that you went to the earth to warn our enemies? That you brought this young one back to spy upon us?
No, Saddam. I admit nothing.
Naturally. What say you, Earthling? You deny coming here to spy on us?
My name isn't Earthling, it's Jim Olsen, and I didn't come here to spy.
I've heard enough to convince me that you both lie. Therefore, I, Zaram, Regent of Utopia, sentence you both, you, Anthar, and you, Earthling, to be placed within a sealed space shell, to be thus hurled out into great space itself, where you shall perish.
While Anthar bowed his head as in token of submission, Jimmy's face drained of color as the realization of the fate to which Zaram had doomed him struck home. Alone, a stranger on a faraway planet, with no hope of contacting me, the boy felt there was no hope.
In just a moment, we'll return for the climax of today's episode of Clark Kent's fascinating story. So keep listening. And now, back to Clark Kent's narrative of Superman's most unusual adventure.
As Zaram, evil regent of Utopia, pronounced the death sentence for Anthar and Jimmy Olsen, there was a moment of silence in the huge throne room. Then Anthar raised his head high and spoke up.
One moment, sire. As a senator, I demand my rightful privilege of a trial by my Senate colleagues. For so is it prescribed in the great charter of Utopia.
Oh? So, you wish a trial, do you?
Yes, I demand it as my right.
Very well. You shall have a trial. And the Earthling, too, tomorrow. But I would not advise you to hope for too much from this trial, Anthar. Guards! Take away these two and place them in cells.
Yes, sire. Come, prisoners. Guard, call in. Come, friend James.
Boy, I sure was surprised when Zaram let you bluff him into giving us a trial.
It is a hollow victory, or agreed only because he considers it a meaningless gesture.
Why do you say that?
Because all good and brave senators who dare to defy Zaram have been imprisoned or liquidated. The remainder either fear or willingly follow Zaram.
Oh.
Friend James, I am afraid, I am very much afraid, that tomorrow will see the end of us.
Oh, gee whiz.
His face grown pale again, Jimmy walked with a sad-faced Anthar among the menacing men of Zaram. And despite his fear of what lay in store for him, he told me later the one thing that hurt him most was the thought that Poco, the little fat rhymester, for whom he developed an affection, had turned against his friend.
Was Jimmy Olsen right in assuming that Poco had turned against him and Anthar? What happens now? Don't miss tomorrow's episode in Clark Kent's thrilling story of Superman's most unusual adventure, when he reveals how he found out about Jimmy's predicament. Yes, be sure to tune in again tomorrow. Same time, same station.
And remember, for breakfast, it's Kellogg's Pep.
For excitement, the adventures of Superman.
Superman is a copyrighted feature appearing in Superman DC comic magazines and is brought to you Monday through Friday at the same time by Kellogg's Pep, the Sunshine Cereal. And be sure to be with us tomorrow for the thrilling adventures of Superman. This is the Mutual Broadcasting System.
And that was part 4 of The Mystery of the Lost Planet from April 14th, 1947, here on the Superman Radio Podcast on Radio Retropolis. You know, I reserve these tags for commentary on the episode, just so I don't want to give anything away before you hear things. And sometimes I'll listen to the episode and then do my intro for it, just so I'm relating something that could be with this particular episode without giving anything away. In this case, you know, I catch certain things after hearing it, and like, for example, Kent states that Jimmy is thousands of miles away from Earth on the planet Utopia. He's describing it as if one traveled from New York to L.A. That would be thousands of miles. To put it in perspective, the closest planet in distance to the Earth is Venus, 24 million miles. Mars is 34 million miles, and Mercury is about 48 million miles, both at their closest distances. Now, obviously, distances vary depending on orbit, but I would think a planet like Utopia that nobody on Earth would know about, and they certainly didn't know about it in Superman, would be well beyond any of the known planets, thus being several hundreds of millions of miles away from Earth, not thousands. And it appears Poco may be a traitor, but since we have heard Poco in a later story, we know there is more to this than meets the eye. The dictator Zaram speaks perfect English, which is never explained here. In the mysterious disappearance of Clark Kent that we heard, the podcast several seasons ago that had Superman in a similar situation in which saving the planet Apollo put him in peril. While he was there on the planet, they explained that he had to wear a certain device for his ears that would translate their language into his language so that they could communicate. And I thought that was a nice touch because, I think your audiences, your boys here, even teenage boys, they're smart. They think, how do they know how can they talk to each other? Well, in Utopia, they just kind of abandoned that whole thing. Perhaps they are in L.A. after all, and they just didn't tell anybody. And that'll do it for us tonight. That was part 4 of The Mystery of the Lost Planet from April 14th, 1947, here on the Superman Radio Podcast on Radio Retropolis.
This is Radio Retropolis.